Since childhood, you've followed an unwritten law more powerful than any religion, more effective at control than any government. They never named it, they just whispered it into your bones until it became who you are. Be nice, be polite, be agreeable. You were told this makes you good. But what if niceness was never about morality? What if it was always about control? Every empire that's ever ruled understood one fundamental truth: a polite population never rebels. A man afraid to offend will never revolt. A man desperate for approval will never rise. Machiavelli witnessed this centuries ago. He watched republics crumble, not from invasion, but from men who couldn't say no. Men who confused being liked with being respected. Men too soft to lead, too agreeable to survive. So he wrote something that terrified rulers more than any rebellion. A book that dared to say, if you want to command, stop trying to be loved. The church banned it. Kings condemned it. Because it exposed their greatest secret. Niceness is the leash around your neck. 5 centuries later, here you are, still wearing it, apologizing for nothing, laughing at jokes that demean you, agreeing to demands that drain you, terrified of being called rude. Look at every powerful person you admire. Every leader, every conqueror, every master of their fate shares one trait: they're willing to be disliked. They don't chase approval, they command respect. Society calls this evil, arrogant, cold, heartless. They said the same about every great man who refused to kneel. Here's Machiavelli's truth: you cannot be powerful and pleasing at the same time. You must choose. The moment you stop caring about being liked, you become free. You become dangerous. You become real. The disease of people-pleasing. There's a sickness spreading through modern men. Subtle, silent, devastating. It doesn't attack the body. It devours the will. It infects your spine, leaving your mind sharp, but your spirit obedient. Machiavelli would call it exactly what it is: a political disease disguised as virtue. Most men don't even know they're infected. They think politeness is morality, silence is maturity, self-sacrifice is noble. But beneath that mask, people-pleasing is fear wearing a smile. Where it begins, the disease doesn't start in adulthood. It begins the first time you're punished for saying no. The first time they tell you to stop being difficult. The first time you're rewarded for staying quiet. You learn early approval equals safety. Making others uncomfortable makes you bad. Conflict is dangerous, harmony is holy, so you adapt. You fold your anger inward. You dim your instincts. You replace your desires with whatever keeps the peace. This becomes habit, then belief, then identity. And the world applauds. Such a good boy, so polite, so easy to work with. They praise the disease because it makes you predictable, harmless. Someone who will never challenge them. The symptoms: by adulthood, the disease has fully matured. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. Pure reflex, not guilt. You agree with people you don't respect to avoid tension. You maintain relationships that drain you because loneliness feels worse than unhappiness. You work harder than everyone but speak up less than anyone. You tolerate insults, delays, disrespect, convincing yourself it's not a big deal. Everything becomes not a big deal until one day you realize your entire life has become one long string of compromises. Meanwhile, the people you tried to please keep taking, demanding, expecting, because the disease doesn't make others kinder. It makes them bolder with you. Why the people pleaser always loses. You think people appreciate your niceness. They don't. They interpret it. When you can't say no, they assume you have no boundaries. When you fear conflict, they assume you won't defend yourself. When you rush to help everyone, they assume your time has no value. When you're always available, they assume you're not important. Human beings don't respond to kindness. They respond to cost, consequence, and boundaries. A man without boundaries cannot command respect. He can only beg for it, usually without realizing it. This is the fatal flaw, trying to buy respect with kindness. But kindness is free, and what is free has no value. The world rewards scarcity, not generosity. Resolve, not agreeableness. Strength, not softness. Deep down, even the people pleaser knows this. That's why he feels exhausted, disrespected, overlooked. He's living in a moral fantasy while everyone else lives in reality. The psychological trap. The people pleaser isn't just nice, he's addicted. Addicted to approval, addicted to peace, addicted to avoiding discomfort. Every yes gives temporary relief, at least no one's upset with me. But the cost? Long-term spiritual decay. He trades self-respect for temporary harmony, integrity for temporary approval, his future for comfort in the present, and the worst part? He thinks he's being good, noble, but there's nothing noble about being weak, nothing moral about lying with a smile, nothing righteous about sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't do the same. The breaking point, every people pleaser hits the same moment, when the polite mask cracks and buried anger leaks through, because beneath every overly nice person is a man filled with years of unspoken resentment. Not because others hurt him, but because he never protected himself. That's the disease. Not the world mistreating you, but you allowing it. Once you see that, you cannot go back. How niceness gets you used. The world has learned to read niceness for what it truly is, not virtue, but a coup. Yet announcement that you have no defenses. A polite man thinks he's being moral. Everyone else interprets him as someone who won't fight back, and human beings are drawn instinctively toward whatever offers the least resistance. It's not malice, it's instinct. People take the easiest path. The people pleaser is always that path. The pattern is everywhere. The nice man stays late when everyone else leaves. He adjusts his schedule while nobody adjusts theirs. He gives constant reassurance but receives none. Not because he's loved less, because he's respected less. Respect is built on boundaries. Niceness is built on their absence. A man without boundaries becomes a tool, a convenience, something picked up when needed, set aside when not. Kindness creates entitlement. The people pleaser believes kindness creates gratitude. In reality, kindness without cost creates entitlement. When you give too freely, people don't think he's generous. They think he'll do it again. The first favor feels like appreciation. The 10th feels like expectation. The 30th becomes an unspoken requirement. And when you finally hesitate, when you consider saying no, they look at you like you've broken a contract. They never signed niceness conditions, people. It trains them. It teaches them your time is always available, your energy always accessible, your tolerance endless, your resistance non-existent. Once someone gets comfortable with that version of you, they won't adjust when you finally stand up. They'll get offended, push back, accuse you of changing, but you're not changing. You're stopping the performance they benefited from. Hierarchies are instinctive. Humans sense hierarchy before they understand it. They subconsciously place others above or below them. A man who never pushes back, never asserts himself, never imposes friction, he gets placed at the bottom, not because others hate him, because he signals he belongs there. People respond to signals, not intentions. Look at those who command respect. They aren't rude for sport. They're simply unafraid of displeasing others. That's the difference. They don't chase approval, so their presence has weight. They don't cling to harmony, so their words have force. They don't fear conflict, so their boundaries remain intact. Even their silence feels stronger than a people pleaser's enthusiastic. Yes, confidence doesn't draw respect. Consequence does. If crossing you has no consequence, you cannot command respect. You can only hope for it. People don't respect what's safe. They respect what's stable, firm, unmovable. Niceness bends, yields, absorbs the blow and smiles afterward. Once someone sees you can absorb a blow without responding, they stop treating you like someone who can deliver one. The moment of realization. There's always a moment when the people pleaser realizes what he's done to himself. It looks like exhaustion, but it's deeper. It's awareness that his entire personality has been shaped around avoiding other people's disappointment. He sees how often he agreed when he didn't want to, how often he showed up when he wasn't valued, how often he tolerated words and actions that would have made a stronger man walk away. And he feels resentment, not toward those who used him, but toward himself for allowing it. That resentment is a dying identity. The mask is cracking. The truth is leaking through. A man who pleases everyone eventually faces the person he pleased the least, himself. The power of strategic rudeness. Rudeness has been demonized for a reason. Not because it's immoral or harmful, but because it threatens systems that rely on your obedience. From childhood, they taught you that rudeness was the ultimate social sin. Not lying, not manipulation, not cowardice. Rudeness, the slightest firmness, was punished. The faintest sign of spine was labeled attitude. They didn't fear cruelty. They feared a man who could say no without apology. because a man who can say no cannot be controlled. What rudeness actually is, rudeness in its purest form, is simply the refusal to accommodate, the rejection of the rule that you must be pleasant at all times, the willingness to disappoint others. That, more than anything, is what makes it powerful. The world doesn't bend for the agreeable, it bends for the unyielding. People who get what they want aren't the ones who make everyone comfortable. They're the ones who make themselves impossible to ignore. A firm tone is perceived as strength, a direct statement as authority, a refusal spoken plainly as danger. Even the smallest act of blunt honesty shifts the dynamic instantly. People stop assuming, stop demanding, start recalibrating, because suddenly you're not predictable, not pliable, not safe. Humans respect what they can't predict. The psychological dynamic. You've seen this your entire life. The co-worker who says I won't be doing that gets treated like higher rank than the one who smiles and agrees. The man who refuses an invitation gains more intrigue than the one who eagerly accepts. The woman who says this doesn't work for me is valued more than the one who tolerates everything. Nobody admits this, but everyone reacts to it instinctively. The person who refuses is the person with value. Rudeness is simply the courage to prioritize yourself openly. Not theatrics, not cruelty, not aggression. Clarity. A man willing to be blunt communicates something terrifying. He cannot be manipulated by guilt. Guilt is society's favorite weapon. Guilt keeps you polite. Guilt keeps you small. But the moment guilt loses its effect, the entire power structure flips. Suddenly, you're the one others adjust to. The secret nobody teaches. P.O. Plea, tolerate rudeness from the powerful, but punish it in the weak. If a leader snaps, it's intensity. If a dominant personality speaks bluntly, it's confidence. But if a timid man does the same, he's disrespectful. Why? Because strength legitimizes rudeness. Weakness doesn't. This is why kindness works when it comes from a powerful man but destroys a weak one. The powerful man's kindness is a choice. The weak man's kindness is a survival mechanism. One is respected, the other is exploited. Rudeness changes this instantly. It tells the world, my kindness is optional now, not automatic. It introduces friction, and friction forces people to reevaluate their behavior. When you speak bluntly, you raise the cost of interaction. When you refuse politely, you raise it further. When you state boundaries without apology, you raise the cost to its rightful level. Suddenly, you're no longer the discount version of yourself, you're full price. Liberation through boundaries. Most people aren't prepared for this shift. They expect the old you, agreeable, soft, predictable. When they encounter your new tone, they'll call you rude, difficult, arrogant. They're not describing your behavior, they're describing their loss of access. Rudeness is what happens when you lock doors they once walked through freely. Once they realize you're no longer afraid of disappointing them, the game changes. They adjust. Think before asking, retract demands, approach with more care, treat your time seriously, choose words wisely, become more respectful, not because you became nicer, because you became someone they cannot push. That's the true power of rudeness. It restores balance, returns you to yourself, signals that your life is no longer a public resource. You stop being the cushion that absorbs every blow. You become the wall they cannot move, in a world built on pressure and expectation. There is nothing more powerful than the man who refuses to bend, becoming disagreeable. Learning to become disagreeable isn't about becoming hostile. It's about reclaiming authority you surrendered. Without realizing it, the world taught you that being easy to work with makes you admirable. Being flexible makes you mature. Being endlessly patient makes you virtuous. But the truth is simpler and more brutal. The man who fears disagreement fears himself, and the man who fears himself can never become powerful. Step 1. Understand that conflict is information. Most people avoid disagreement not because they're peaceful, because they're fragile. They crumble when someone pushes back, panic when approval is threatened, retreat the moment tension rises, as if tension itself means they've done something wrong. This is the conditioning you must dismantle. You must become comfortable standing inside the heat of disapproval. Let people be irritated. Let them misunderstand you. Let them feel disappointed. Their emotions are not your responsibility. Their expectations are not your commands. Their reactions are not your burden. You're not here to manage their comfort, you're here to protect your sovereignty. Once you strip away the instinct to immediately appease, something strange happens. You see how rarely disagreement escalates into anything dangerous. People push hard only when they sense you'll collapse fast. When you stop collapsing, they stop pushing. What you feared was never real. The conflict wasn't the threat. Your imagination was. Step 2. Practice blunt honesty, not cruelty, not emotional violence. Just truth delivered without the sugarcoating you've used your whole life. This doesn't work for me. I'm not available. That's not my responsibility. I disagree. Simple sentences. Yet to the people pleaser, they feel like detonating explosives, and in a way, they are. They destroy the version of you who relied on softness to survive. They break the pattern others expect. They shatter the illusion that your compliance is guaranteed. You'll feel guilt at first, the reflexive urge to explain yourself in paragraphs, to soften your tone, to ensure nobody feels offended. Do not collapse back into that instinct. You're not responsible for managing reactions. You're responsible for maintaining truth. Truth requires simplicity. Step 3. Build a new identity. Over time, a new identity takes shape, one that no longer uses politeness as a shield. You begin choosing silence over people-pleasing, valuing your own comfort over the comfort of those who drain you. You stop volunteering for unnecessary tasks. Stop accepting invitations out of obligation. Stop pretending to agree when your mind burns with contradiction. Slowly, without fanfare, you become someone not shaped by external demand, but by internal standards. People will notice. Some will respect you more. Others will resent you. Those who benefited from your softness will accuse you of being different, cold, rude, selfish. Remember, when you stop sacrificing yourself for others, they'll interpret it as betrayal. Their disappointment isn't a sign you've done something wrong, it's a sign you've stopped doing something wrong. The real transformation happens when you realize that disagreeableness, the willingness to stand firm, to refuse, to confront, is the foundation of all power. Every strong leader, every influential personality, every respected individual shares one trait. They're willing to create friction. They don't chase harmony, don't fear tension, don't adjust their identity to fit the room. They let the room adjust to them. When you become this way, your presence changes. People speak to you differently, anticipate your boundaries, consider your time valuable. Think twice before placing burdens on you. They don't assume access, don't assume agreement, don't assume compliance. You become someone who must be approached with intention, not assumption. That's the essence of power, being someone whose reactions matter, whose boundaries alter behavior, whose presence imposes structure. Disagreeableness isn't darkness, it's clarity. It's the ability to navigate the world without betraying yourself in the process. You're not becoming rude, you're becoming real. And the world only respects what is real, reclaiming what was stolen. There comes a moment when you realize something unsettling. Most of what you called kindness was never kindness. It was strategy, fear. A way to make the world less dangerous by making yourself smaller. You soften your voice so you won't provoke anyone. Agree quickly so nobody thinks you're difficult. Suppress your needs so you're never seen as a burden. This is how the people pleaser survives, by disappearing a little more each day. But survival is not living. A man who disappears eventually reaches a point where the world no longer notices he exists at all. What you must reclaim. When you begin killing the people pleaser inside you, face this truth directly. You've spent years negotiating away parts of yourself in exchange for peace. You paid for temporary approval with permanent self-loss. Handed out pieces of your dignity like free samples. Now you must reclaim them, one by one. First, reclaim your time. Stop handing it out like a consolation prize. Stop rushing to answer messages instantly. Stop rearranging your entire day for someone who wouldn't do the same. Start asking yourself a question the people pleaser never asks. Is this worth my life? Because time is life. When you give it freely, you're donating your existence to people who haven't earned it. Second, reclaim your voice, not the polite whisper why you've been trained to use. Your real voice, the one that speaks truth without trembling. Start telling people when you disagree. Express your preferences without apologizing. Stop lying to avoid conflict. Stop pretending everything's fine when it isn't. This alone transforms how people treat you, because honesty disrupts the script they've written for you. Third, reclaim your presence. Stop walking into rooms like a guest in your own life. Stop shrinking your posture to appear non-threatening. Stop nodding at everything to seem agreeable. Your energy shifts from "I hope I fit in" to "I'm willing to stand alone." People feel that shift instantly. Presence isn't about speaking loudly. It's about existing fully. The world senses when you stop hiding from yourself. Fourth, reclaim your standards. The people pleaser has none. He accepts crumbs and calls them meals, tolerates disrespect and calls it patience, stays in draining situations and calls it loyalty. But a man with standards begins filtering his world. He stops trying to keep everyone, becomes selective, discerning. He walks away when something isn't right, instead of negotiating in circles trying to fix what shouldn't be tolerated at all. This is where people pull away, not because you've become cruel, but because you've stopped being convenient. The moment you develop standards, you require effort from others, and effort reveals who actually values you. The people who vanish were never yours. They were loyal to your softness, not your soul. Let them disappear. Their absence creates space for people who treat you like a human being, not a tool. Fifth, reclaim your inner permission. The permission to take up space, to disappoint people, to say no without guilt, to choose yourself without apology. When you finally grant yourself that permission, you become untouchable in a way no bravado could create. You stop needing validation because you validate yourself. Stop fearing abandonment because you no longer abandon yourself. The shift to sovereignty. This shift doesn't make you ruthless. It makes you sovereign. A man who is sovereign over himself is dangerous because he's no longer controlled by the emotions of others, the opinions of strangers, the manipulations of those who seek to benefit from his compliance. He's guided by internal laws, not external pressure. As this version of you emerges, something fascinating happens. The world changes its tone. People become more careful, more respectful, more intentional. They don't walk into your life casually anymore. Don't make demands with the same entitlement. Don't assume your agreement. They approach with awareness that you have a spine now, and that spine has a cost. This is the beginning of power, not dominance over others, dominance over yourself. The man who commands himself commands his environment, and the man who commands his environment alters the course of his life permanently. The rise of the unapologetic self. There comes a stage when something subtle but unmistakable shifts inside you. You stop negotiating with yourself. Stop asking permission from a world that never cared about your comfort. Stop translating your desires into softer versions so others won't feel threatened. What emerges is a man who acts from a center that cannot be bent, manipulated, or guilt-tripped. A man who is no longer living in reaction to other people's emotions. A man who has stepped into the dangerous freedom of being unapologetically himself. The new energy, this version of you doesn't shout, doesn't posture. His power is quieter, colder, sharper. It comes from the absence of fear, not the presence of aggression. He no longer wastes energy trying to be liked, doesn't chase understanding, doesn't soften truth to avoid discomfort. He simply exists as he is. And that alone changes the dynamics of every room he walks into. People notice immediately, even before you speak. There's a heaviness to you now, a gravity. You carry yourself like someone who has stopped minimizing his presence. You don't rush to fill silences. Don't perform friendliness. Don't fake enthusiasm. Your stillness speaks louder than the old version of you ever could. The world looks at you differently because you're no longer signaling weakness. You become a mirror. You become a mirror that reflects people back to themselves. Those who are strong will respect you. Those who are insecure will fear you. Those who once relied on your softness will resent you. But none of these reactions touch you anymore. Your self-worth is no longer out there. It's in here, locked beneath your ribcage, untouchable. What unapologetic actually means. Being unapologetic doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop contorting. It means you stop abandoning yourself to maintain a peace that always costs too much. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you finally understand yourself. You no longer fear being alone because you finally enjoy your own company. You no longer fear disappointing people because you finally stopped disappointing yourself. This shift terrifies the world because it eliminates their leverage over you. They cannot guilt you, cannot pressure you, cannot shame you into compliance, cannot use your desire for approval against you because you no longer desire it. You've stepped outside the psychological cage they spent years building around you. And freedom, real freedom, makes you unpredictable. How everything transforms. Your relationships transform. You stop tolerating half effort. Stop accepting conditional respect. Stop entertaining people who only show up when they need something. The moment someone senses you will not beg, will not bend, will know. Cling. The dynamic either purifies or dissolves. The ones who stay treat you with the seriousness you always deserved. The ones who leave were feeding on your weakness, not your warmth. Your decisions transform. You no longer choose the safe option by default. No longer sacrifice your progress to avoid upsetting others. No longer dilute your ambitions to keep the peace. Every choice becomes cleaner, harder, more honest. You start building a life aligned with who you are, not who you pretended to be. Your standards transform. You stop explaining why something is unacceptable. Stop repeating yourself. Stop negotiating with people who aren't negotiating in good faith. You don't raise your voice. Raised voices are for men who lack power. You simply walk away, and the act of walking away becomes the strongest declaration of self-respect you've ever made. What this really is, the rise of the unapologetic self, is not loud, not dramatic. It's the quiet death of the boy who needed approval and the birth of the man who doesn't. It's the end of the psychological slavery you carried since childhood. It's the collapse of the identity that kept you useful to everyone but yourself. Once this shift happens, something irreversible takes place. You stop living reactively and start living architecturally. You build, you choose, you define, you lead. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself first and let the world adapt. This version of you is not rude. He is undeniable, not aggressive, uncompromising, not cruel, unbreakable. The path forward. You've come this far. You've seen the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You've watched the old version of yourself fracture, collapse, and finally die. Now you stand as someone the world can no longer mold, guilt, or control. But understand this, transformation isn't a moment, it's a war. Every day the world will try to drag you back into the old role, the obedient one, the quiet one, the useful one. You do not let them. You hold your ground. Protect your voice. Choose yourself first, not once. Every single day that follows, because the rise of the unapologetic self isn't a temporary spark. It's a permanent shift, a declaration that from this point forward, your life will no longer be dictated by approval, fear, or expectation, only by your will. If something in this journey woke you up, if a single sentence cracked the shell you've been hiding in, if you felt the old version of you start to tremble, that means you're ready for what comes next. So do one thing, stay with me. There's more to build, more to destroy, more to reclaim. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and step into the next chapter with the same unapologetic force you found here today.